So now we're going to look at the many masks, the many roles that an American president plays. And the presidency is there in order to provide a strong executive, a personality, a leadership that will counterbalance the sort of groupthink committee work of the legislative branch in the House of Representatives and the Senate, and it will also counterbalance the sort of theoretical constitutional focus of the courts. The president is supposed to be the leader on the ground, the head of the executive branch, the one who enforces the laws of the United States and who leads in times of war and who gets things done. So, what are the various qualities that or roles that a president must play? First of all, they are the chief executive officer. In our school, the chief executive officer is our principal, Mr. Nicolay. Mr. Nicolay is the one who runs the school on a day-to-day basis, both when you guys are here and when you're not. Mr. Nicolay is the one that people go to when they need decisions made now. Now, Mr. Nicolay has to answer to a board of directors, which are a group of people that come together to supervise the good of the Coeur d'Alene Charter Academy. They sort of function like the Supreme Court. So our principal needs to explain to them if they have questions about why he made certain decisions. For example, why did you hire that weird Genorio guy? There were so many better people you could hire, but instead you hired him. Why? And, well, he'd have to answer and explain, well, everyone makes mistakes. He must have made a mistake the day he hired that Genorio fellow because, Genorio. In any event, the chief executive officer is the leader. He is the person who makes decisions about how the institution is going to function on a day-to-day basis. What is he the chief executive officer of? The executive branch of the federal government, which includes the State Department, which deals with foreign countries. It includes the Defense Department, which deals with the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Marines, and the Coast Guard, our military. It deals with the Department of Justice, which supervises and enforces federal law. It deals with the Department of the Interior, which deals with things like federally owned lands, which comprise about, one way or another, half the state of Idaho, maybe 2/3. The executive branch of the government is a massive bureaucracy and set of authorities that gets things done, as diverse as welfare programs that are run by the federal government, Indian or Native American tribal reservations and lands, the space program, and research into a variety of fields. The federal government deals with interstate commerce, international trade, labor relations, and a bunch of things. It has grown in size and in authority and in where it meddles or where it makes decisions over the last 120 years, from its original constitutional role, which was fairly small, into a role now where the government of the United States often plays a role in the daily lives of many Americans. So the president is the chief executive officer. There was once a president in the 1940s called Harry S. Truman, and during a time of crisis where some decisions that were being made by executive branch officials were being questioned, he showed reporters a sign that he had put on his desk. And that sign said, "The buck stops here." In other words, whatever these people have done, I'm their boss. I'm responsible. You want to blame someone? Blame me. You want to come and talk about the policy decision that they made? Come talk to me. I have the responsibility of being the final decision maker in this, and I am therefore responsible. The buck stops here. So the president is the chief executive officer of our executive branch of the federal government in peacetime. That's similar, by the way, to the role a king plays. This may not have been the case if we hadn't started out with George Washington as our first president, but we did. And this is also in some ways similar to a king. In wartime and in peacetime, the president is the commander-in-chief of every military force the United States has. There is a chain of command. Guided missile destroyer has a captain on board who is responsible for making decisions for all of the officers and service people on that ship, all of the Navy personnel and maybe Marines on that ship. That captain of a guided missile destroyer can hear from congressmen and senators who provide the money for the upkeep of that destroyer, for its fuel, for its weapons, for its people to be paid. But a senator or a congressman can never give that captain a direct order about anything. The chain of command in the military, from the lowest new recruit who just takes the oath to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, from that lowest serviceman all the way up, it stops at the President of the United States. The President of the United States is the chief of every military asset that the United States has and can give orders through the chain of command to anyone in the American military. This is important because in wartime, you don't want to wait for a committee to decide what your strategy and tactics are going to be. In wartime, you need a competent and serious person to take charge. George Washington was made president because he led the fight to defeat the British in the Revolutionary War. His background was as a plantation owner in Virginia, but his real successes were on the battlefield up until the point where he became our first president. So because of him, since then, every American president is also commander-in-chief of the military. And the military take all of their orders through a chain of command that goes from the commander-in-chief, who is the President of the United States, through the Secretary of Defense, through the Secretary of the Navy, through the General Staff in the Pentagon, the Joint Chiefs of Staff they're called, through the Navy chain of command to the captain of that guided missile destroyer. That's where legitimate orders come from, and any order that does not originate in that chain of command need not be obeyed. It's a distraction. It is not a legal order. It's not a legitimate order. So the president is the chief of our civilian government executive branch in peacetime and in war, and he is the commander-in-chief of our military in peacetime and in war. Also a bit like a king. The president is also the ceremonial head of state, which is also a bit like a king or a queen. There are times when the United States of America needs to be represented by a person. So, for example, on the anniversary of the Battle of Normandy, the D-Day invasion of Europe by the Allied forces on June 6, 1944. The anniversary on June 6th every year since then has been of great importance to anyone who remembers World War II, and before now, people who fought in World War II, who grew up after World War II, who knew what World War II was all about, and how important it was that young Britons and young Americans and young Canadians and young men from all over the world would risk and maybe give their lives on the beaches of Normandy, France, to land an Allied army to fight the Nazis from the West and defeat them. So every year, June 6, 1944, there's a ceremony. And on some years, like the anniversary that's, the 10th, 20th, 30th, 40th, 50th, 60th, 70th, and so forth, the American president, the British prime minister, the French president, and the leaders of other countries that were involved come to Normandy and they speak. And I remember in 1984, during the 40th anniversary, when President Reagan was there, I watched the ceremony live. It still gives me sort of a choked up feeling when I think about it. Because Reagan was being treated not as the head of the Republican Party, not as the chief politician in the United States. Reagan was treated like the representative of every American man, woman, and child, especially those who sacrificed in World War II. Reagan was given the personal role of accepting the gratitude of the peoples of Europe who America helped free, not because he personally did it, but because he is the president of the United States. In 1961, the Soviets built a wall around the city of West Berlin, which was an island of freedom in the midst of communist East Germany. And the East Germans and the Russians were embarrassed that East Germans consistently tried to escape from communism to freedom. It made them look bad. So they built this wall. And they started shooting anyone or blowing anyone up who tried crossing it. Kennedy goes to Berlin, where he is surrounded by communists just a few miles away from him. And he says, "Ich bin ein Berliner." Ich bin ein Berliner means, I am a jelly donut. But the Berliners understood what he meant. He meant, I am a Berliner. I am a citizen of Berlin. I and every other free man, woman, and child is a citizen of Berlin. And if you want to understand the struggle between freedom and communism, come to Berlin and see what it's like. And what the people of the free world saw was not one young American Navy vet who's a Democrat senator from Massachusetts. No, they saw America personified by John F. Kennedy coming to Berlin and saying to the people of Berlin, I'm one of you. And we're not going to forget you, and we're not going to let you become absorbed by communism. The ceremonial head of state will continue next time.